Welcome back to the Racing Mind video series, where we journey deeper into the human mind than anyone has ever gone before. In this video series, we untangle the ancient mystery of mental illness and teach you what you need to know before your racing mind gets the best of you. This groundbreaking series provides answers to some of the deepest mysteries of the human mind and reveals, for the first time in history, the precise cause of mental and emotional illness and the psychophysiological basis of a wide range of psychiatric disorders and associated medical conditions. These educational videos, which present concepts that are so new that they are just beginning to make their way through the medical field, are based on thousands of hours of direct patient analysis and clinical observation in conjunction with the latest research on psychiatric disorders from around the world. In this segment of the series, we will discuss the psychophysiology of mental illness. Disorders of thought, behavior, and emotion, what we classify as, quotes, psychiatric disorders, have, throughout history, been the most intensely studied, yet remain the most poorly understood of all illnesses. Short of a clear understanding of what causes mental illness, two camps of belief have emerged. Those who believe in the power of the mind to overcome, and those who believe in the power of biological therapies to alleviate the suffering that makes mental illness the world's largest single health problem. What has been preventing us from solving the mystery of mental illness is the failure to delineate the anatomical and functional distinction between the mind and the brain. Because the mind is invisible and intangible, the prevailing assumption has been that the mind is merely a product of complex brain function. But that begs the question, how can the brain, as a physical organ, give rise to the spiritual process of perception? And how can the cells of the brain, either individually or collectively, give rise to the will, or to attention, or to emotion? The cells of the heart can't do these things. The cells of the muscles can't, nor can the cells of any of the other tissues of the body, though they are made of the same building blocks as the cells of the brain. The answer is that the mind, rather than being a product of brain function, is entirely different than the brain. The mind is an independent, self-governing entity that directs the processes of the brain like a driver of a car. Hence, to try to understand how the brain works without acknowledging the independent functions of the mind would be like trying to understand how a car drives without acknowledging that there is a driver behind the wheel. In reality, most of the extraordinary capacities that have been attributed to the brain actually belong to the mind. These include perception, attention, will, emotions, instincts, drives, memory, intuition, and the capacity for love. The primary function of the brain, like all the other organs of the body, is to allow the mind to interact with the physical world. It does this by relaying electrical signals back and forth between the mind and the body. What we call psychiatric symptoms are driven by abnormally intense and unduly prolonged signals in the brain. The overactive circuits cause the mind, which is both productive of and sensitive to magnetic fields, to keep dwelling on things rather than letting them go and moving on to the next area of interest. The most common cause of this neurological hyperactivity is emotional tension. Specifically, high levels of tension in the mind induce strong magnetic fields, which in turn cause the associated neurons of the brain to fire more frequently and for longer periods of time. Because the firing of these neurons perpetuates the same magnetic fields, the associated mental and emotional tensions begin to ramp up. This in turn causes the brain to become even more intensely stimulated, thus leading to a vicious cycle of mutual overstimulation between the mind and the brain. Those most vulnerable to developing this vicious cycle are persons whose neurons are inherently hyperexcitable. For such persons, relatively minor stressors can rapidly snowball into big ones, thus causing the mind to race and emotions to surge for prolonged periods of time. For some persons, the inherent level of neuronal excitability is so high that psychiatric symptoms may develop even in the absence of any psychosocial stressors. In theory, the inheritance of a high level of neuronal excitability is the most common cause of chronic mental illness. How then does psychotherapy work? Psychotherapy helps reduce mental tension, which in turn reduces the level of excitation in the brain. This, in turn, further reduces the level of mental tension. Over time, ongoing psychotherapy and other forms of stress reduction can lead to a resolution of psychiatric symptoms by reversing the vicious cycle of mutual overstimulation between the mind and the brain. An alternative, or better yet, complementary approach to treating psychiatric symptoms is to directly regulate the firing of neurons with anticonvulsants and other brain calming medications. By directly reducing excitation in the brain, these drugs rapidly break the vicious cycle of mutual overstimulation between the mind and the brain that drives psychiatric symptoms. If the inherent level of neuronal excitability is not too high and the precipitating stressor begins to resolve, the dosage of medication can subsequently be reduced or even discontinued. On the other hand, persons whose psychosocial stressors and/or inherent level of neuronal excitability are very high may need to take brain calming medications for an extended period of time. It is our hope that this anatomically and physiologically based explanation of psychiatric disorders will help bridge the gap between psychology and biology and guide the use of more precise and effective treatments for mental illness. Control your brain, control your life. We hope that you are benefiting from this video series. Portions of this video and others in the series were taken from the books The Racing Mind and Am I Depressed or Am I Bipolar? Those interested in developing a deeper understanding of this topic can also refer to the scientific publication The Multi-Circuit Neuronal Hyperexcitability Hypothesis of Psychiatric Disorders. Please note that these materials in this video series are for educational purposes only and are not intended to guide treatment without formal evaluation. This video series is sponsored by the Binder Foundation, a charitable organization that is dedicated to the enhancement of human life through research and education on disorders of the mind, body, and spirit. If you have found this video to be of benefit to you, please share it with your family and friends. And please don't forget, your feedback is important to us.